In 1978, the FBI created a psychological profile to catch the most dangerous minds in America. The profile describes someone who wakes up thinking about one thing, goes to sleep thinking about the same thing, who studies patterns obsessively, who builds elaborate systems and rituals around a single pursuit, who feels physically uncomfortable when separated from it, who sacrifices relationships, sleep, food, and social normalcy without hesitation, who experiences something close to euphoria when the pursuit goes well, and a rage so quiet it becomes fuel when it doesn't. The FBI used this profile to hunt serial killers. Harvard used almost the exact same profile to describe their highest performing students. The mechanism is identical. The target is the only difference. That's not a metaphor. That's neuroscience. And once you understand what's actually happening inside an obsessed brain, whether that brain belongs to a killer or a champion, you will never think about focus, ambition, or high performance the same way again. Chapter 1. The Lock. In 1988, a researcher named Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi published a study on peak performance that would later become one of the most cited papers in psychology. He studied surgeons, chess grandmasters, Olympic athletes, concert pianists. He was trying to find the common variable, the one thing every elite performer shared regardless of field. It wasn't talent, it wasn't IQ, it wasn't work ethic in the conventional sense. It was a specific neurological state he called flow, a state where the brain locks onto a single target so completely that the outside world stops existing. Time distorts, hunger disappears, self-consciousness vanishes. The person and the pursuit become one thing. 3 years later, FBI behavioral analyst Robert Ressler published his research on serial killers. His subjects described the exact same state, the same tunnel, the same disappearance of time, the same merger of self and pursuit, the same inability to stop. The brain doesn't distinguish between pursuits. It only knows locked and unlocked. When a target activates the brain's dopamine system with sufficient intensity, the prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for self-regulation, moral reasoning, and long-term thinking, goes quiet. Not broken, quiet, subordinated. The limbic system takes over. The pursuit becomes biological, not chosen, driven. This is why telling an obsessed person to just stop doesn't work. Whether they're obsessed with rank, with chess, with killing, or with building a company, you're not talking to a decision, you're talking to a drive. Okay, but obsession sounds dangerous. I don't want to become consumed. I just want to perform better. Here's the problem. You don't get to want obsession on your terms. The same study by Csikszentmihalyi found that you cannot access sustained peak performance without the lock. Occasional effort produces occasional results. The lock produces compounding, and compounding is the only mechanism that separates the good from the legendary. You've seen this everywhere. The topper in your class who wasn't just studying harder, they were somewhere else entirely. Eyes open, physically present, mentally gone. You thought they were disciplined. They weren't. They were locked. Discipline is what you use when you're not locked. It's exhausting. It depletes. It requires constant willpower to maintain. The lock is effortless. That's the terrifying part. For both the killer and the champion, your brain was not built for moderate, sustained effort. It was built for obsession. The question has never been whether to obsess. The question is what to aim the lock at. Chapter 2. The Ritual. Here's what nobody tells you about obsession. It doesn't just happen. It's built, deliberately, methodically, through repetition so precise it becomes ritual. Ted Bundy had a ritual. Every step was planned. The approach, the timing, the specific conditions he required before he acted. Investigators noted that deviating from the ritual made him uncomfortable, almost physically distressed. The ritual wasn't just behavior, It was architecture. It held the obsession in place. Vishwanathan Anand has a ritual. The world chess champion arrives at the board with the same sequence every time. Same preparation, same mental walkthrough, same internal conditions required before he engages. Deviating from the ritual breaks the lock. He said it himself. The game starts before the first move. Same architecture, completely different purpose. This is not coincidence. This is how obsession sustains itself inside a human brain. Here's the mechanism. When a behavior is repeated under identical conditions, the brain begins to anticipate the neurological reward before the behavior even begins. This is called conditioned dopamine release. The ritual triggers the brain state, not the other way around. This is why elite performers are so rigid about their pre-performance routines in ways that seem irrational to outsiders. Serena Williams bounces the ball exactly 5 times before her first serve. Exactly 5. Not 4, not 6. Rafael Nadal arranges his water bottles at a precise angle before every single point of every single match in his career. Journalists called it superstition. Neuroscientists call it conditioned access to the lock. The ritual is the key. The performance is just the door opening. You think the toppers in your life are just smarter? You don't see the ritual because it happens before you arrive and after you leave. You see the result and call it talent. What you're actually seeing is the output of a system so practiced it's become invisible. Most of you have no ritual. You sit down whenever, in whatever environment, in whatever mental state happens to exist that day. You pick up your phone 3 times in the first 10 minutes. You call this studying. You wonder why nothing sticks. That's not a focus problem. That's an architecture problem. Build the ritual before you need the performance. The same conditions, the same sequence, the same deliberate entry, every single time, without exception. Your brain doesn't care what you're pursuing. It responds to repetition. Give it the same door often enough, and it will learn to open before you even knock. Chapter 3. The Surrender. Here's the part nobody wants to hear. Every person who has ever become genuinely exceptional at something has paid the same price. Without exception, without negotiation, they surrendered. Not their values, not their identity in the deepest sense, but everything peripheral, everything comfortable, everything normal. Edmund Kemper had an IQ of 145. While imprisoned, he read audiobooks for the blind, thousands of hours, produced over 5,000 recordings. Guards described him as the most disciplined, focused person in the facility. Prison psychiatrists noted he had completely surrendered any interest in a conventional life from an early age. His entire psychological energy had collapsed inward around a single point. Paul Erdős was one of the greatest mathematicians who ever lived. 1,525 published papers. More than any mathematician in history, he owned nothing, not a house, not a car, not a bank account. He showed up at colleagues' doors with a single suitcase and worked until they were exhausted and then kept working. He had no relationships in the conventional sense. He called children epsilons. He called women bosses. He called men slaves, as in slaves to conventional life. He genuinely could not understand why anyone would spend energy on anything other than mathematics. His friends described him as the freest person they had ever met, and the most terrifying. Same surrender, one aimed at destruction, one aimed at creation. I need to be honest with you about something. For a long time, I thought obsession was something that happened to other people. Extreme people, unusual people. I watched high performers from a distance and told myself they were wired differently, born different. I used that story to excuse the gap between what I was doing and what I was capable of. Then I read about Erdős, and I understood the actual reason I wasn't where I wanted to be. I hadn't surrendered anything. I was trying to keep everything: the comfort, the social life, the sleep schedule, the weekend, the option to stop whenever it felt hard. I wanted the results of obsession with none of its cost. I wanted the lock without giving the key. That's not ambition. That's a wish. The uncomfortable truth is this. Every hour you spend maintaining the peripheral, you are actively spending the energy that the lock requires. You cannot be fully consumed and fully comfortable at the same time. These are not compatible states. Erdos called it simple. He said most people want to live their lives and also do mathematics. He only wanted to do mathematics. That clarity, that complete narrowing, is what the research actually shows separates the exceptional from the very good. A 2011 study at Northwestern University examined 120 elite performers across music, chess, and athletics. They were looking for the variable that predicted eventual mastery. It wasn't starting age. It wasn't hours practiced. It wasn't innate ability measured at age 6. It was the moment of commitment. The researchers called it the investment year, the single year in which the subject stopped treating their pursuit as one of several priorities and made it the priority. Everything else became secondary. Not abandoned, secondary. After the investment year, the trajectory changed permanently. Before it, progress was linear, incremental. After it, compounding. The gap between these people and their peers widened every year for the rest of their careers. One decision, one surrender, one direction for the lock to point. Okay, but this sounds extreme. I have a family. I have responsibilities. I can't become Erdos. You don't need to become Erdos. But you do need to be honest about what you're actually surrendering and what you're not. Because right now, most of you are surrendering the result while keeping the comfort. You are making the sacrifice in reverse. You are paying the price of obsession, the anxiety, the dissatisfaction, the feeling that you're not where you should be, without paying the price that actually produces the outcome. Half surrender gives you all of the suffering and none of the reward. Full surrender gives you the lock, the ritual, the compounding, the result. That is the only choice on the table. Here is what the psychology of obsession actually says. The brain that tracked Bundy's victims and the brain that tracked Erdős' theorems were running the same software, the same dopamine loop, the same ritual architecture, the same complete subordination of peripheral life to a singular pursuit, the same lock. One aimed it at people, one aimed it at numbers. The mechanism doesn't have morality, it has direction. And direction is the only thing you control. Toppers don't focus harder than you. They've stopped fighting the lock. Killers don't feel more than you. They aim the feeling somewhere you chose not to go. The obsession was always there, in both of them. The only question was never whether to surrender. It was what to surrender to.